So the middle eagle, no, just kidding. So the middle Roman is scrawnier. Yeah, I got that.
I gotta keep that one.
No, we'll put it in the beginning. We'll put it in the beginning. We'll put it in the beginning. What's good? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian. I'm a 33-year-old man who never read the Percy Jackson books as a kid. I read them as an adult because I was determining if it was a book series that society had been sleeping on. I said yes, and now I'm seeing if society has also been sleeping on the Heroes of Olympus series, and I'm joined today for the second time covering these chapters, and we'll explain what that means, by a very special guest, someone that I love with all of my heart, not just the bottom of my heart, the top of my heart, the middle of my heart, the sides of my heart. It's Kelly Schubert. Kelly, how's it going?
It's going good.
So the reason that we said this is the second time is because we have covered these chapters before. If you are an astute follower of the Newest Olympian, specifically if you follow us on Instagram, where we talk about all of the live show stuff and we detail all of the goings on with that at Newest Olympian on Instagram, you may have keyed into the fact that these chapters were what made up the Salt Lake City live show.
Or if you were one of the lucky 50 people who were at the Salt Lake show.
More than 50 people attended
one
the show.
One of the lucky 10,000 people
there it is.
at
That's
the
the
Salt
number.
Lake City show.
But if you were at the show, you know what happened. So here's what went down. You may have keyed in. Wait a second. I thought this was going to be the SLC show. Yes, it was. But we were unable to record the audio from the Salt Lake City show. So that show came together kind of last minute because of our travel scheduling and just difficulties in finding venues in Salt Lake City with availability on such short notice. But we had a place. It was a movie theater that also has a bar and stuff. And they're not necessarily prime for podcast recording, but they said we could do it. And I had talked back and forth with the person who ran the thing there, and there was a miscommunication about their audio recording capabilities because we were unable to set up multiple microphones and we were unable to set up the recording device. We tried very complex things, including using a 50-foot long extension audio cable that ran from the front where the screen is in the movie theater up the seats all the way into the back where the projector is.
That was going to be a disaster.
It was going to be a disaster, but it was going to at least get the audio working. And then when we decided and learned that the audio was not going to work, we were at least able to get rid of the cable that was running through the middle of the movie theater.
We had a big sign that said, merch this way, cable that way.
There was a tripping hazard. It would have been a mess. So at least that was a silver lining from it. But we were unable to get the recording going. We couldn't get two microphones going either. So Kelly and I had to share one singular wireless microphone. I'm now realizing that phrasing, I don't mean singular wireless like the old cell phone company with the little orange dude. I mean one single microphone that did not have a wire, and we had to pass it back and forth. And thank goodness you were the guest, because if anyone else was the guest and we had to do that situation, it could have been awkward because our mouths were quite close to each other the whole show.
It was a lovely little date, snuggled up together on stage,
in front
sharing
of
a microphone.
10,000 people.
10,000 people.
Mm-hmm. But we did end up recording the audio just with like an ambient microphone. I'll put that up on the Patreon if you really want to hear, but we're going to do our best to recapture and rekindle all of that magic. We've got my same notes. We've got the same chapters to cover. So let's get into chapters 18 through 20 of the Mark of Athena. Now, where we last left our heroes, we had Annabeth just having a very cool and very normal conversation with her mom. It was super fine. Nothing weird happened. No weird standoffishness. And then to keep the not weirdness going, she had a very cool and normal conversation with Frank. Frank wanted to open up about his whole stick situation, but then he got nervous about it, and then that was the end of the chapter.
Those are some very normal conversations for Annabeth. Very normal, run-of-the-mill.
Yeah, just a Tuesday. So, chapter 18 is an Annabeth chapter. It is called Annabeth. We will retitle it, obviously. It begins with, quote, "That night, Annabeth slept without nightmares, which just made her uneasy when she woke up, like a calm before the storm," which is incredibly ominous. Leo docks the Argo 2 World Tour in the Charleston Harbor. Annabeth goes to the deck, but Jason and Frank and Leo have already left for their boys' trip to the museum. Hedge says that they plan to return by sunset. Piper and Hazel are ready to roll, but Annabeth checks in with Percy first to see what he will do while they're gone.
Do we know what the boys' mission was already?
Yes, they're going to the museum because they're trying to figure out something about some very old warship, and that warship is in the museum.
Yep, makes sense. I remember.
And your trapdoor is still intact.
Still intact.
So very casually, Percy says that he's going to jump into the harbor in an effort to communicate with the local Nereids to see if they have any advice about freeing the folks in Atlanta.
When I see Nereids written, I always think it's nerds. So he went to communicate with the local nerds.
There's so many more letters. Percy's going to go talk to the local nerds. He's going to go
attack those local nerds over there and see what's going on.
He's going to go to the D&D store. He's going to go to the local comic book store and chat it up with the people in the middle of a Yu-Gi-Oh tournament. No offense to anyone. I am a nerd too. I love nerd stuff. He also thinks that being in the sea may be restorative for him. And we do get this note from narrator Annabeth. Percy and her, their gray streaks in their hair have disappeared in the time in which Percy was missing. And I don't understand how or why that would work. I thought they got the gray streaks because they held up the weight of the world. So I don't understand why their hair is like, oh, well, Percy forgot who he was. And thus both of you have lost the gray streaks in your hair.
I don't think that's related.
Why wouldn't they be related? I thought the gray streaks were because of what happened in the Titan's Curse.
So I always assumed the gray streaks are because holding up the weight of the world was stressful. And so they got more gray hair when they were stressed out. But it's not because Percy lost his memory that his hair is no longer gray. It's no longer gray because it grew out and he's no longer stressed out holding up the world.
But he hasn't been holding up the world for like 4 books at this point now. So if it was just like they got the gray hair once and it wasn't eternal, he would have had a haircut, right? Like it would have been gone. It doesn't take that long for roots to grow out.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I thought it was just like, you will forever have this gray streak. Like the roots are just gray eternally from the stress. So for them to just go away, like years have passed since the Titan's Curse.
I mean, he's not Rapunzel entangled or anything like that.
No, but he's also a boy with, if not cursed hair, normal hair. And, and it grows out quick enough. And he doesn't keep his hair long.
I think maybe also losing your memory makes you a little less stressed out. I don't know. It may make me more stressed out, but he had a lot going on. So maybe he got less stressed.
Sure.
Stopped graying. Maybe he got a nice short haircut, nice short Roman haircut, and then his gray's gone. But I don't think it's related to his memory loss.
It's just like the passing of time.
Yeah, I think it's just the passing of time.
I just thought this would have happened earlier. I've never dyed my hair and I never will.
I haven't either.
I would imagine it takes more time than that to grow out. I have moved the part in my hair over, and that was a 6-month long process, but it's been more than a year since the Titan's Curse.
Well, so I don't know if it's common knowledge for everybody, but when you go through postpartum, your hair becomes weaker and it's likely to break, especially in like the front and side. So this is how much of my hair has grown out since our baby was newly born and my hair was breaking. So this is probably about a year of hair growth because it was breaking for a couple months after she was born.
Yeah, but
so this is a year of hair growth right here.
But that I think is longer than Percy keeps his hair, and I think he's been gone for almost 2 years since the end of the Titan's Curse. Let me just Google time between Titan's Curse and Son of Neptune. The Titan's Curse takes place in December, while Son of Neptune is set in June, roughly 4.5 years later.
Oh my. All right, look, I'm really proud of my little postpartum hairs and how far they have grown. They almost fit in a ponytail, and I'm really proud of them. But I take a vitamin every single day. I don't know if Percy's taking his vitamins. No.
So here I found a non-spoilery timeline of the Riordanverse, and because they keep it vague in the books, Rick doesn't put an exact year on it. Instead of like BC and AD, they have year 0 as ATPT, after Thalia's pine tree. So book 1 takes place in 5 ATPT. Sea of Monsters is in 6 ATPT. Titan's Curse is in 6 ATPT December. Battle of Labyrinth is 7, and then Last Olympian is 8.
Why'd they pick Thalia's pine tree as the 0?
It should be the start of the series.
No, the start of the series.
At least from what I've read, don't say anything. The earliest thing that I have ever read in anything is right before Thalia becomes a tree.
No, I mean page 1 of The Lightning Thief should be year 0.
Right, but I guess
and then Thalia's tree is -5.
I would argue that's more complicated. Now you just have to have one timeline instead of like being negative and positive.
Well, everything before Percy is negative. negative.
Oh, so Percy's Jesus Christ.
Well, Percy's the hero of the story.
He's the Messiah. Does that make the Demigod Diaries the Old Testament? The Diary of Luke Castellan is the Old Testament. Okay, but anyway. The Lost Hero is 8 ATPT. The Son of Neptune is 9 ATPT. And then the Mark of Athena is also 9 ATPT. So the time difference between Titan's Curse and Mark of Athena is 2.5 years.
After Thalia's pine tree? Why
Yeah.
not just after Thalia's tree? ATT.
Take it up with, the user has been deleted, so you can't take it up with anyone.
Well, look, thanks Unknown for putting the work into this timeline.
2.5 years.
But I've got some suggestions.
2.5 years. Also, that 4.5 years thing, of course, was like the Google AI auto thing. Of course it was wrong. Of course it was wrong.
I was going to ask you if it
Once
was
I read it,
AI.
I was like, that doesn't feel right.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that doesn't seem.
So yeah, 2.5 years, I think that's long enough, but look, whatever. This has been enough of a hair diversion. But of course, hair boy Mike Schubert is going to talk about hair. But anyway, this Percy Jackson. But wait, also, but why Annabeth's disappeared too? Okay, anyway, I guess it must just be time. I think Rick just grew out.
It grew out.
But Rick doesn't understand how it works. I mean, his hair is always gray. Anyway, I think what's going to be interesting is how they do the gray streaks in the TV show, because Walker is blonde, and I think that could be very subtle.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're going to try to do something to make it look more profound and stick out more, or if they're just going to be like, this is what it is.
I think it'll be subtle.
It'll be interesting. It'll look cool with Leah's hair too.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued to see how they do it.
Anyway,
Back to this story. Annabeth and Percy wish each other safety and good luck, and Annabeth departs with the ladies. Narrator Annabeth says, quote, afterward, Annabeth wished she jumped into the harbor with Percy. She even would have preferred a museum full of ghosts. So clearly, we know that this trip is not going to go well. She clarifies it's not because of being with Piper and Hazel, who made the beginning of the trip lovely. They arrive at the park, which is White Point Gardens, and while taking in the sea breeze, she thinks to herself that it would suck if she ever had to break up with Percy. And I love the phrasing of she would ever have to break up with him, cementing that it would not be her fault, which is accurate.
Oh, yeah. She's like, he would never break up with me. But if I broke up with him, then I would never walk down Cornelia Street again.
Where's Cornelia Street?
London.
What
it's in Greenwich, right?
I don't know. What is this
I bring
a reference
this up
to?
later up in the live show. This is a Taylor Swift reference that I threw in that went completely over your head during the live show.
Okay. It went over my head twice now.
Yeah, it went completely over your head. And then later on, I made another Taylor Swift reference. And I said, this is my second Taylor Swift reference of the show. And you're like, what?
This is the problem with having you on the podcast and Taylor Swift comes up, because people have this misconception that I'm a really big Swiftie and I'm really just more of like a supportive husband Swiftie. I like Taylor Swift and I loved Trouble and read the whole album in college. Like, big fan of that.
Have you heard the song Cornelia Street?
No.
I believe that I explained this to you at the show.
Okay, look. Going over my head.
Because later on, when I told you that I had made this reference, you asked what it was. She writes a song about Joe Alwyn and about how if they ever broke up, she could never walk down the street where they lived together.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Which album was this on? Tortured Poets?
No, this is on Lover.
Lover. Okay. Yeah. But anyway, it slowly reveals that I'm not as big of a Swiftie as people think I am. I like her, but I'm not like listening to the full.
No, I
haven't listened to all 87.5 songs on the 13 different versions of the Tortured Poets Society that is out.
If that's the case, I think our baby's a bigger fan than you are, because I played them for her every morning.
You have. And LOML works to get her to sleep.
Yes.
Anyway. Back to this story. I think the phrasing of it is very funny because, yes, I think Percy would be a fool if he did something to make Annabeth want to break up with him. But look, Jay-Z cheated on Beyonce, so anything is possible. Oh, Jay-Z, what were you thinking? Now, she says that she would be constantly reminded of him every single time that she thought of or saw the ocean. That's why it would suck if she ever had to break up with him. And yeah, like,
she'd have to move someplace with no water.
Such as?
Well, I was going to say Salt Lake, but they have a big lake and it's salty.
But it is slowly losing water.
True.
But yeah, she'd have to move to like Death Valley or something.
Yeah.
Or she'd have to move to the Sahara Desert.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the park isn't crowded. Annabeth describes the old school colonial architecture a bit, and she does like it. So, resident architect in the closet here that we're recording out of, Kelly, what are your thoughts on colonial architecture?
I mean, yeah, it's classic. It's gorgeous.
Oh, okay, cool. Annabeth, validated by a real-life architect. Hazel says that this architecture reminds her of New Rome. Annabeth then thinks to how the American South compared itself to Rome before the Civil War, and apparently part of that also had to do with slavery, since Rome had slaves too. Narrator Annabeth says, quote, the houses and the gardens were very beautiful, very Roman, but she wondered why beautiful things had to be wrapped up with evil history. Or was it the other way around? Maybe the evil history made it necessary to build beautiful things to mask the darker aspects. And then I just wrote my notes, oh, lol, because then narrator Annabeth says, quote, she shook her head. Percy would hate her for getting so philosophical. If she tried to talk to him about stuff like that, his eyes glazed over. So I had thought, oh, wow, how philosophical. And then literally the next line, she's like, wow, so philosophical.
When Annabeth said this, it actually reminded me of our relationship also, which you're proving I'm completely correct about.
Okay.
So when we were in Amsterdam, we went to this park and there was a memorial there that was like a broken mirror on the ground looking up at the sky. And it was supposed to represent the horrible occupation of Amsterdam. And it was just so surreal because when you imagine, at least for me, when I imagine really dark moments in history, I never imagine them on a pretty day. I imagine them overcast and rainy and cold and the mood fitting the history of what's happening there. But we were at this park on this beautiful, gorgeous spring day, blue skies, white puffy clouds everywhere, tulips blooming around us. And it was just such a juxtaposition of being in this place and thinking about these horrible things and it being beautiful and remembering that like even when horrible things happen, the world doesn't stop moving. And I convey this to you, this philosophical thought that I've had, and you go, yeah, it's a cool park.
I stand by what I said. It is a cool park. And I think I was just soaking in how cool the park was, that I wasn't ready for your thesis statement TED Talk about the juxtaposition. I can never hear the word juxtaposition and not think of the part of the music video for the song Wyclef Jean by Young Thug, where they say juxtaposition and then they put text on the screen in a very fancy font that says juxtaposition. I would highly recommend everyone watch that music video because I think probably 5 to 10 people are getting this reference and more should get it. I don't know if there's a lot of Young Thug and TNO listenership crossover, but there should be more of it. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Piper keeps looking around like she's expecting an ambush. Narrator Annabeth adds that Piper revealed she saw this park in her night vision but wouldn't explain the details. Annabeth can't blame her, as the last time that she tried to interpret a night vision, Percy and Jason almost killed each other. And yeah, we got the whole cover of the book situation that was not ideal for either of our boys. Hazel seems distracted. Annabeth is guessing because of the looming Nico situation. And then I was very surprised by this from narrator Annabeth. Quote, Annabeth felt that deadline weighing on her too. She'd always had mixed feelings about Nico D'Angelo. She suspected that he had a crush on her ever since they rescued him and his big sister Bianca from that military academy in Maine. But Annabeth had never felt any attraction to Nico. He was too young and too moody. There was a darkness in him that made her uneasy. I'm sorry, what? Did that go over my head? Because I never for a millisecond thought that Nico had a crush on Annabeth. What is happening?
I don't think that you missed something obvious.
Okay.
I think this is the first time we've had some kind of really heavy-handed implication of this.
It's the first time Annabeth has been the narrator and thought about Nico.
Right. It's the first time that Annabeth is speaking about her perspective, and she would have a different perspective on this than like Percy would. Like Percy wouldn't necessarily be like, Nico had a crush on my girlfriend for the whole series or something.
I mean, have you ever seen the way Percy thinks about Luke?
An excellent point.
Yeah, okay. From Annabeth's perspective, I'm now intrigued to see her and Nico interact, and I would love if that interaction happens when Annabeth is the narrator because, yeah, I guess thinking about it, they didn't have too much crossover. They were there for the beginning of the Titans Curse, but then Annabeth is gone for most of that book. And then he comes through at the end of book 4, but he's not there too much, and he's going through a whole lot. And I don't know how much crossover they have in book 5 either. So I get it, but also I just can't recall there ever being a time where Nico was like a cartoon character with the auga heart eyes and his jaw hitting the floor and his tongue rolling out. Annabeth adds that she feels responsible for him as the narrator, and she can relate to him thinking he was an orphan before meeting Hazel, of course. Piper points out the ghost. Hazel corrects that it's not a ghost, as no spirit glows as brightly as this being is glowing. Piper walks after it as if she's in a trance. The other two follow, and then Piper grumbles, "It is her." So my guess was, okay, this has to be Aphrodite, right? And then the woman stops in front of them, the glow reduces, and narrator Annabeth describes her as beautiful and with changing gorgeous features, which is always the way that Aphrodite is described. And I think it's a very fun thing that Rick has come up with. I really enjoy that. I don't know if that's in other media, but whatever it is, the whole morphing feature thing, I think is awesome.
Do we know what actress is going to play her yet?
I don't think that she's been cast yet.
They should cast her as a different actress every season, because they explain her look as shifting between the look of all these different classic actresses and types of people. And I think it'd be really cool if they cast her as a different actress for every season.
I agree that it would be cool, but I think it would be confusing for the children watching the show.
Come on, this show's for us. It's not for the kids.
So we get the confirmation that it is Aphrodite, and her hair changes from blonde to dark brown curls, and Annabeth is jealous because no one takes her seriously as a blonde. And I think that is such a whack thing that did exist. Is that a thing anymore now? I feel like I haven't heard a, dumb blonde comment or joke or anything. I'm not a blonde, but I feel like I haven't heard people making those references. Do those still happen?
I think in some ways it's a issue for a lot of women. And I imagine that it is a large issue for blondes as well.
Okay. But in 2025, people are still making these stupid blonde jokes. Is it just old people that have hung on to it?
Probably.
Old people.
Bringing down the mood. Old people.
Just, ruining a couple of different things. But even as a kid, I never got that. My sister's blonde. She's very intelligent. I don't get it. I never got it. I don't get it. I hope it goes away forever. The woman is dressed as a Southern belle, just as Jason described, and Annabeth begins to feel jealous of this woman's attributes, her charm, and then she clocks that it's Aphrodite. She asks if she's Aphrodite. Hazel asks if she's Venus, which makes sense because of the Roman situation. Piper asks if she's Mom. Aphrodite opens her arms for a big group hug. None of them accept. She says that she's glad that they're here and explains, quote, "War is coming, bloodshed is inevitable, so there's really only one thing to do." Annabeth asks what, and Aphrodite says, "Have tea and a chat."
Tea time.
Tea time. And then narrator Annabeth says, quote, "Aphrodite knew how to tea, and you love a tea. So what were your tea time thoughts? Tea time in general, and then this specific Aphrodite tea time."
Look, tea time is fun. I prefer my tea time with a coffee, some tea time pastries, and a coffee to sip, but I would not say no to an Aphrodite tea time.
Yeah. Seems like she knows what's up. She takes them to a gazebo set with silverware, china, tea that changes fragrances just like the way that she changes her looks, scones, cookies, muffins, butter, and jam. And Annabeth thinks that none of this will make you fat. And it reminds me of a joke that I would always make at Papado Seafood Kitchen, where I would bring out the dessert tray. And we had one of those dessert trays where it's like made with the real food, but then also some fake food because things melt. Like, for example, if you ever see something where it's like a real pie with ice cream on top, that ice cream is butter. So don't ever eat the food on a display tray of like physical desserts if that's the menu that the restaurant is rocking.
Are you even allowed to eat that?
You are not. But if you're ever walking through and thinking, ooh, I'll get a spoonful of ice cream, don't do it because that's butter. Like, they use other food for different things. So definitely don't do it. But I would bring the tray out and then people would, usually make some sort of comment of, oh, I'm too full. Or sometimes people would say things like, oh, but how many calories are in all the things? Like after I would describe each of the ones one by one. And I would always just joke and say, what's interesting about our desserts is that none of them have any calories. And every once in a while, someone would be like, really? And I'd have to go, no. Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. The double fudge chocolate mousse cake is calorie free? Of course not.
Do the rules of physics cease to exist in your kitchen?
A My Cousin Vinny reference. I love you. 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 Anyway, Percy Jackson. Aphrodite is sitting in a wicker peacock chair. Isn't the peacock Hera's whole thing?
Well, but a peacock chair is just like a classic Southern wicker chair, I think.
Oh, like a peacock chair is a style of chair.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, let me Google. Oh, okay. Yeah. I guess it's peacock. Oh, online. Ooh, some of these like have a peacock pattern in the back of the chair. Okay, I've seen this type of chair before. I did not know that was a peacock chair. Anyway, Aphrodite is perfectly dishing out food, which enrages Annabeth even further because, like, no tea is dripping on the table, no crumbs are forming, every slice of something is perfect. Annabeth asks her if she is Venus or Aphrodite, and Aphrodite deflects by saying that Annabeth has grown into a beautiful woman, though she would change her hair. She suggests that Hazel change her clothes, which Hazel is confused by since she is just wearing a shirt and jeans. Piper says that she's embarrassing her, and Aphrodite says that just because Piper rejects her fashion advice doesn't mean that everyone will. Piper scolds her again. And then Aphrodite begrudgingly answers Annabeth's question. She is both Aphrodite and Venus, and her justification is that she didn't really change much when the Roman aspects were introduced, and love is love no matter who you are. And that's valid, and I do think that it's valid because based on what I know about the Greek stuff of Aphrodite, like the paintings of Venus and the paintings of Aphrodite and their origin stories are pretty similar. So I don't think this is Rick doing some sort of convenient thing just to make the plot work. I think that this is actually a legitimate thing based in mythology. I'll obviously have to check on the Myth Check episode. And speaking of, we did a slight misstep on, I think, the most recent Myth Check episode, because I believe the story is that Uranus's love juice fell into the ocean and then the sea foams and then that makes Aphrodite. But I think Dr. Moya said that it was Zeus, but maybe in some tellings of it, Zeus is the one who did it, but I think the more common version is Uranus. But all this is to say, the Birth of Venus painting famously mimics what I've heard is like the Greek version of how she was made. So her saying this in the book made sense to me.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, she's in that big old seashell. You know. Annabeth is frustrated that her mom, the most logical of the Olympians, has become chaotically evil, while the only people who haven't changed are Aphrodite, Nemesis, and Dionysus. Quote, love, revenge, wine. Very helpful. And that's got to be the tagline for the Golden Bachelor, right? Or how Bachelor in Paradise now has the golden people there as well. I saw a commercial for it. The old people are now mixing with the young people. I have no idea how that's going to go down.
Like, is it two separate beaches or are they like one group?
If they were on separate beaches, that feels ageist. Like, let the potential for cougaring happen.
Oh,
Don't take this from us.
Oh, no.
Aphrodite says that the war won't affect her. Hazel says
that... Hold on.
Bachelor Kelly has been unearthed.
Hold on. Because you want the drama of the cougar, but what about the pedo old man?
Oh.
Yeah, like the 60-year-old who wants to get with the 21-year-old. It's weird.
The old women are allowed to be on young people beach. The old men are on their own old people beach by themselves.
The young boys and the old women can go between the beaches, but the old men and the young girls need to stay
them apart.
Separate.
They're not allowed to talk. Aphrodite says that the war won't affect her. Hazel says that they aren't in a war yet. Aphrodite says the war is coming and love and war always go together. She tells Hazel that she has, quote, heart-rending days in front of her. Naturally, Hazel asks what that means. Aphrodite says that Annabeth could give Hazel an idea since she once promised her an interesting love life and delivered. And here we go. And I'm very excited about this because now everyone can stop talking about this. Everyone can stop trying to convince me of otherwise. My Luke hater hat has been strengthened because of what Annabeth says next. Quote, for years, her heart had been torn. First, there was Luke Castellan, her first crush, who had seen her only as a little sister. Then he'd turned evil and decided he liked her right before he died. So all this crap where people are like, oh, when Luke says, do you love me at the end, he means, do you love me as a sibling? No, according to Annabeth, who is never wrong about anything ever, especially as the narrator, as we've seen in The Mark of Athena, Luke liked her in the relationship. Like Luke liked her.
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I always thought it was. There's some fringe things where people are like, no, he didn't mean it that way. He absolutely did.
Yes.
And he was super weird because he was in his 20s and Annabeth was still a teenager. Super weird. I'm so glad that I'm vindicated by none other than Annabeth Chase. So then next came Percy, who was infuriating but sweet, yet he had seemed to be falling for another girl named Rachel, and then he almost died several times. Finally, Annabeth had gotten Percy to herself, only to have him vanish for 6 months and lose his memory. So through gritted teeth, Annabeth says that interesting is putting it mildly. Aphrodite says that she can't take credit for all of Annabeth's troubles, but she does love a good love story with twists. Piper asks if there's a reason why she's here. I love that. Why are you here? Is there a reason why you're here? It's just so fun. After minutes and minutes of talking, you've already taken some free food away from her, and then you just go, okay, what are you doing here?
Just stuff my pockets with scones.
Whoop, whoop, whoop. Oh, yep, just going to pour tea directly from the teapot into her mouth before she asks this. So Aphrodite says that she loves to come here because there are centuries worth of romance and heartbreak in the air. She references a party that happened on the night that the Civil War began, the shelling of Fort Sumter. Annabeth recalls this happened at the island in the harbor where the Confederates shelled the Union and took the fort. Aphrodite goes into giddy detail about the party. Annabeth is enraged that she would speak with such joy about one of the bloodiest wars in human history beginning. And then she keeps going on. Piper scolds her, and then Aphrodite relents and says that she is here to help them.
Hold on a second. Did you miss the pigeon reference?
There was a pigeon reference?
Yes.
Okay, so when she was doing this, because one, I don't like history, and I definitely don't want to hear about a cool Civil War party, so I was like, yada, 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 fancy party. So what did I miss?
So when yada, 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 fancy party, Mother, Piper tossed her scone to the pigeons.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. I'm so glad that didn't get dropped. That's fantastic. Oh, those pigeons are well fed now.
So well fed. I think you missed my sister's story the other day about pigeons.
What was I doing?
I think you were putting the baby down.
Oh, so I was being a great dad.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I was talking about pigeons with my sister. Don't ask me why.
As one does
I don't know
when
why.
Kelly Schubert.
We were talking about pigeons, and she was telling me about how she was reading a story about how researchers had trained 12 pigeons in 2 weeks to identify malignant versus benign breast cancer cells. And one pigeon on its own is 75% accurate, but the whole flock of 12 is 95% accurate if you take the average of them. And that is the same accuracy of a trained pathologist.
That's incredible.
It's so cool.
Did the pigeons smell the cells?
So they show them images of the cells.
Okay.
So you still have to go get your blood drawn and your cells taken and then, all of that kind of stuff. But when she was telling me about this, I didn't know those details yet. And I thought you just went to a room with a bunch of pigeons and they would come up and sense it. Like a dog can sense things in human, right? They would just sense it in you and then go to one side of the room or the other based off of what they sense. But no, they trained them to identify on a slide of cells. They can read whether it's benign or malignant.
I hope to never get a tumor. But in the case that I do, I would hope that I'm taken into a room where they basically tell you, okay, we're now going to bring you your results. And then they bring me into another room with 12 pigeons in tiny little lab coats with tiny little stethoscopes and tiny little name tags and just tiny little doctor pigeons. And, they say the doctor will see you now. Or I guess the doctors will see you now.
The doctor's pigeons will see you now.
Oh, man, pigeons. Incredible. Anyway, Percy Jackson. So Aphrodite says that they won't be seeing Hera much as her plan has angered the other Olympians. Aphrodite says to Annabeth, quote, I suppose you've told your friends about your falling out with your mother? Hazel and Piper look at Annabeth in confusion. Annabeth is upset. She tries to downplay it as nothing. Aphrodite protests and says that Athena had the most differences between her Greek and Roman aspects. When Aphrodite mentions Bellona, Piper grumbles that she's Rhena's mom. Aphrodite then says that she had a chat with Rhena in this park and then says, quote, the Romans had Mars, of course, and later there was Mithras. Not even properly Greek or Roman, but the legionnaires were crazy about his cult. I always found him crass and terribly nouveau dieu, personally. At any rate, the Romans quite sidelined poor Athena. They took away most of her military importance. The Greeks never forgave the Romans for that insult. Neither did Athena.
I think I mentioned earlier that Aphrodite was pouring the tea perfectly, but to me, it really seems like she's spilling it.
Ooh. Well done, well done, well done, well done, well done, well done. Annabeth gets an idea and asks, does the mark of Athena lead to the statue? And there's been a lot of talk of the statue, and at least my guess is that I think there's some Greek mythological story when they were doing the thing in Athens where they were deciding to name it after Athena or Poseidon, and Athena won because she did the olive tree or whatever. I feel like they built a big statue to her. And I think that this is an important statue. So my guess is that when the Romans took over, they got rid of this statue, and that is the statue that we keep hearing about. In an earlier episode, I guessed that the statue was Arachne because that was brought up when it was like, oh, our talented person and woven and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like an Athena statue makes way more sense than a giant spider statue. But yeah, I don't know what's up with the statue, but I feel like that is ringing a bell in the back of my I know tiny little things about mythology brain. That's all I'm going to say. And that's all you're going to say because your trapdoor has to stay intact.
Yeah, if we're sitting this close and my trapdoor activates, do we both go?
No, so I have it set in the closet here where it's just on your side.
Oh,
we are sitting on opposite sides of a table. So basically the midway point, it'll drop you out.
I see.
I wonder where it would go in our building. Maybe it brings you to the
trash room.
Oh, down the trash chute. No!
No!
Aphrodite calls her very clever, then says that children of Athena have been unsuccessfully searching for centuries for the mark of Athena, and they are the ones keeping the rivalry alive. Every civil war, there's much bloodshed and heartbreak, largely because of the children of Athena. Annabeth is in disbelief, but then she does come to believe it based on Grand Central Terminal Athena. She asks Aphrodite how the mark works, like is it a set of clues or a trail, and Aphrodite says that she's unsure, adding that Athena didn't create it consciously. She guesses it's more like a spiritual trail of breadcrumbs. Quote, it's a connection between the statue and the children of the goddess. The statue wants to be found, you see, but it can only be freed by the most worthy. And this is the second book in a row where we've had the most worthy, where Hazel is the most worthy to ride Arion and Annabeth is the most worthy to complete the Mark of Athena quest. But in both cases, it does seem legit because both of them are amazing demigods.
Seems very King Arthur to me.
Ooh, again, not super familiar with King Arthur in the full proper story, but I know like the basic beats, Sword in the Stone and Spamalot and Monty Python.
I mainly know the Julie Andrews Broadway Camelot version, which happens after King Arthur becomes King Arthur. So I have some ideas about his origin story, mainly from Disney. And then I have some ideas about his later life and Camelot from Julie Andrews.
Unsurprisingly, one of the other things I know about King Arthur is from Hades the video game, because that's one of the swords you can use in Hades 1.
That's so funny.
Piper asks what statue they're talking about. Aphrodite laughs and says that Annabeth can explain. She tells them that the map is nearby. It was left by the children of Athena in 1861. She explains to Annabeth that no one has followed the mark to its end. She warns her that she will face her worst fear, the fear of every child of Athena, and asks, in the rare chance she succeeds, would she use the reward for war or peace? Annabeth's legs are shaking at this point, and she asks where the map is specifically. Hazel then points to the sky. Chiron? Skyron? Two large eagles are flying above, as well as a chariot being pulled by Pegasi, and Operation End Table was not a success. The book ends this chapter with, quote, Aphrodite spread butter on a muffin as if she had all the time in the world. Oh, the map is at Fort Sumter, of course. She pointed her butter knife toward the island across the harbor. It looks like the Romans have arrived to cut you off. I'd get back to your ship in a hurry if I were you. Would you care for some tea cakes to go? So that's the end of the chapter, which I have retitled At Tea Time, Nobody Agrees.
And there is the second Taylor Swift reference of the podcast.
But see, this is me with my limited, but still very positive Taylor Swift knowledge. Do you have a retitling of chapter 18?
I always forget I'm supposed to do this. And technically this time I've had an additional month to do this.
Right.
However, I'm going to go with the same title that I came up with during the live show, which was Spilling the Tea and Feeding the Pigeons.
Perfect. No notes. That's great. Let's get into chapter 19, which is also called Annabeth, but of course we will retitle it. This one opens with, quote, they didn't make it to the ship. Oh no! So the eagle stopped them halfway across the dock. An armor-clad Roman dismounted from each one, and I thought that there were only 2 eagles, but 3 dudes show up. So maybe there were 3 eagles?
Yeah. In the previous chapter, it says 2 eagles, but then in this chapter, it says 3 eagles arrive.
Okay, so either there were 2 circling overhead and then a 3rd entered.
Yeah.
Or, given Rick's track record of forgetting stuff, he forgot between chapters.
Hey, now, no need for this Rick slander.
That's true.
The third one just arrived.
It was just running late, like me. The middle Roman is scrawnier than the other two, so we know it's Octavian, and he screams, "Surrender to Rome!" And is that really the best that you've got? You have all this time to think of a cool one-liner to say, and you're not going to bust out something like "quit roaming around," or "we won't let you get your greasy pawns on that map." Nothing? Octavian, come on. I have no respect for this guy. And you have no respect for my puns. Hazel draws her sword and tells him "fat chance." I looked up the origin of this idiom because I was like, isn't it strange that we say fat chance for something that has a slim chance of happening? And it's ironic. It's basically what I've described, where you're saying like fat chance, but it's an ironic way of saying it. You don't really mean that there's a fat chance. You mean that there is a slim chance.
Sarcasm.
Narrator Annabeth isn't worried about Octavian, but she doesn't love how burly the other two dudes are and how experienced at fighting they look. Piper tries to explain that what happened at camp was a setup. I like that she does this. Octavian replies, "Can't hear you," but he's not just doing like a nanny boo-boo thing. He's being literal, as they have plugged their ears with wax, which is the same strategy you use when you're dealing with sirens. He demands that they drop their weapons and surrender. Hazel demands the following from the ladies, quote, "Let me skewer him, please." And she's done this before, and I love this for her. I love when Hazel does this. I'm such a big Hazel fan. She's fantastic. Annabeth sees the ship, which is just 50 feet away, but it doesn't appear that Hedge is on the deck. Jason's group is gone until the evening. Percy is underwater. Annabeth sees the eagles circling above them, though there is no sign of the chariot. She wants to finish. So maybe the eagles, maybe those two are still circling, and these are 3 new eagles.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah. A new possibility has entered the chat. Less and less it is likely that Rick just forgot. Annabeth wants to finish this before more Romans show up. She thinks that she ought to send up a distress signal to either Hedge or to Percy. She slowly draws her dagger and then chucks it into the water.
So smart.
Yeah. Octavian is upset, saying that he said to drop their weapons, not to throw them, and that weapon could have been used for evidence or for spoils of war. Annabeth tries to do a little, quote, dumb blonde smile that no one who knows her would buy, but Octavian seems to fall for it because he sucks. While Octavian is instructing the other 2 ladies to drop theirs, Charleston Harbor erupts like that one fountain in Vegas at the end of Ocean's 11. After the water subsides, our team sees the 3 Romans in the water, furiously treading water because they're wearing heavy armor, and Percy is standing on the dock and very matter-of-factly hands the dagger to Annabeth and says, "You dropped this." He's so cool. He is so cool. He's so cool. He's so cool. He's so cool. She gives him a big hug and an "I love you." Hazel says that they must go, but she does so with a smile. She's appreciating the love. Octavian yells for them to get him out of the water so that he can kill Percy, and Percy replies, "Tempting." He's so cool. He's so cool. He's so cool. Percy calls for them to leave. Hazel asks if they're really going to leave these 3 to drown. Percy explains that he has the water circling their feet so they won't, and they will be spit upon the shore once the team is safe. This is very Spider-Man of him. It's like when Spider-Man, at least in the video game Spider-Man, webs people to the sides of buildings so that they don't fall to their deaths, and so that the video game is, I guess, like still rated T for teen or E for everyone.
Yeah. Interesting that Hazel is now all of a sudden concerned for their safety when she just asked to skewer them.
Maybe she was going to skewer them in a way that wouldn't kill them. It would just hurt really badly.
Through the hands.
So they get on the ship. Annabeth instructs Piper to Iris message Jason and tell him to return. And she says to just do it in the sink. And I was wondering, what is in the sink that makes it turn into a rainbow? Like, do they have a faucet and then one of the knobs, like there's a prism nearby or something? Like, I want to know what makes this sink very easy to send an Iris message in.
My mom had 2 of those like prism balls that are just like, that's exactly what they do.
Okay.
But you just replace the knobs on your sink with the prism balls.
Yeah, and then just take like a flashlight or
Perfect.
your phone, depending on whatever year this book takes place in, and then boom, you got it. Annabeth tells Hazel to get Hedge on deck and Percy to get the ship to Fort Sumter. As I've been saying for episodes and episodes, she is totally the leader of this quest, and no one should think otherwise. Percy starts using his Poseidon powers to control all of the boat stuff, while Annabeth tries her best to make sense of the engine and all of the Leo tech stuff. The 3 eagles are kept at bay by Festus, ships spouting fire at them. Annabeth notices 12 more eagles headed towards Fort Sumter. Hedge then arrives on deck. He asks who he is meant to kill. Annabeth says no need for killing. They just need him to defend the ship. Hazel then sees that Frank is in bald, non-Roman eagle form, carrying Leo in his talons, and Jason is flying on the wind behind them. Percy notes that this is the first time he's seen Jason fly before, and he comments that he looks like blonde Superman. Piper says that now isn't the time to talk about how hot my boyfriend is, because the boys are in trouble. Narrator Annabeth explains the Roman flying chariot is headed right towards the boys. They are able to dodge an onslaught of arrows, but they can't get to the Argo reloaded and instead head towards Fort Sumter. Hedge fires a spear from the ballista at the chariot before Annabeth can stop him. It explodes above the Pegasi and they begin to panic. Unfortunately, it also singes Frank's wings, so he spirals out of control and drops Leo. And then the chariot slams into Jason, and Jason, despite being in a daze, is able to grab Leo and control the wind just enough to slow their fall into the fort. Awesome stuff from Jason. Frank falls in after them, and then finally the chariot crashes in atop them.
I love the way that Rick writes action, but I'm also laughing because I'm imagining Leo like Mary Jane in Spider-Man just being thrown around, and he's always going to catch her and save her, but she's just screaming the entire time.
That's a very fun visual. Annabeth yells at Hedge. Hedge is upset and goes, "What? That was just a warning shot." Annabeth accelerates the ship towards the fort, even though she knows the crew left on the ship will be outnumbered at least 3-1. Annabeth instructs Percy to control the water and slow their approach. Once they dock, Percy's job is to fend off the enemies with the help of Piper, Hazel, and Hedge. Piper asks, what about Jason? Hazel asks, what about Frank and Leo? And I'm glad that she asked, what about Frank and Leo? I know that she doesn't really have a tie to Leo, aside from, okay, he kind of looks like my ex-boyfriend, this is weird, but it would have been very funny if Piper was like, what about Jason? And Hazel was like, what about Frank? And no one cared about Leo because he keeps mentioning, as Nemesis told him, he's the seventh wheel.
And then Festus goes,
right, yeah. Festus made some creaky noises. Annabeth didn't know what the hell he was saying. And Percy was like, what about, what's his name? So anyway, Annabeth says that she will find them and she'll also find the map, as she thinks that she's the only one who can. The book then ends the chapter with, quote, "The fort is crawling with Romans. Percy warned, you'll have to fight your way through, find our friends, assuming they're okay, find this map, and get everybody back alive. All on your own? Just an average day," Annabeth kissed him. "Whatever you do, don't let them take this ship." And that's the end of chapter 19, which I've retitled, A Warning Shot Gone Wrong. Do you have a retitling?
I'm going to go with taking one of the best lines of the chapter and say, just an average day.
It's very good. It's very good. It's very good. All right, let's take our mid-roll break here, the market of Athena. And then when we come back, we will discuss chapter 20. Hello and welcome to the Market of Athena Auxiliary Schubio edition. Got some updates about the podcast, the live stream we're doing, and so much more, so let's get into those. As just mentioned right now, this Saturday, if you're listening to this on the week that it came out, we will be in Providence, Rhode Island, and wherever the internet is for a live show, a very important live show that is being live streamed. It is going to cover the final 3 chapters of the Market of Athena, and I will be live reading that part, whatever that big gasp moment is. I'm going to basically read and take notes up until that part, and then live read that portion and live react to it on stage and on stream. So if you live in or near Providence, or you want to make the trip to Providence, hop on an Amtrak or whatever, come on through. We have a low amount of tickets left, but we do still have tickets. And then if you don't want to make the travel out there, but you want to see the show, you can if you get tickets to the live stream, which also comes with a 7-day replay. So if Saturday, September 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern time is not a good day or time for you, no sweat, because every live show ticket comes with a 7-day replay. So you can watch it at another day, another time that works for you. And also, if you're a patron, you get 20% off. And then we'll also be doing Q&A. So you can submit Q&A questions from the live stream. You don't have to be in the crowd in Providence to be a part of the Q&A. Dr. Stephen Parra and Sequoia Simone will be the guests. Robert from the Damn Meme page and Sherry will be running the merch table, and they will be running Q&A. Going to be a blast. You can get tickets to all of those shows at thenewsolympian.com/live. That's also where you can get tickets to our other 2 shows in September. We're going to be in Manchester in the United Kingdom on September 19th. Announced that in the bonus episode last week. We have, again, some tickets, not a whole heck of a lot available, but that's going to be on Friday night at 8 p.m. whatever time zone Manchester's in. And then we will also be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on September 28th. And that is going to be with Eric Hamilton Schneider. The Manchester show will be with Beth Eyre. And for the Manchester show, we're going to be covering the first 3 chapters of the 4th book in the Heroes of Olympus series. And then in Pittsburgh, we'll be covering chapters 4 and 5 of that book. So moving and grooving, stuff's happening. Tickets to every single show that I have talked about is at thenewestolympian.com/live. I hope to see you there at least one. If you attended all 3 of those, that would be ridiculous. That would be absurd travel. I'll be doing it though. I'll be at all of them. One note about this episode in particular, at some point in this episode, I say they try to keep the rivalry alive. I should have made the pun of a livalry. I apologize for not being better there. I will try to be better going forward. Now, as I will reference later in this episode, there is going to be a bonus episode up on the TNO Patreon where I have the live recording of what this live show was meant to be, and we'll put that up there if you want to compare and contrast what that sounded like versus what our retake sounded like. Now, the audio quality is not going to be perfect because it's just with one of the remote microphones. It's not, something like a recording device that I normally use that is tapped in directly to the soundboard that's going to the speakers. So not pristine audio quality, which is why we couldn't use it for the episode. But if you're curious, you can check that out. And then also if you're curious about just behind the scenes things, for almost every episode of TNO, I do a director's commentary. And on director's commentaries, I talk about the particular episode that you just heard. And if it was a live show, I'll talk about what went into the actual performance of it, any funny behind the scenes stories that didn't make it into the episode. And then also talk about updates about what's going on with the show, like new merchandise items that we're working on, new developments that I know from things like just any sort of things that I have advanced knowledge of that I can pass along to patrons. I do. And that's over for the Gods tier and above over at Patreon. And speaking of the Patreon, I'm going to give a shout out to the folks who've joined most recently. We have a bunch of new folks to announce because a lot of people were getting in on the bookmark promotion. So shout out to our newest Mega God tier patron, Shrek's Big Daddy. Shout out to our newest Super God tier patrons, Sarah Harris, Ben, Kate Vivis, Jamie, Bjorn Rombouts, and Lisa W. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Jamie Zilmer, Jason Disgrace, Ida Aslov, Underwater Basket Weaver, Pasidion's, that's how it was spelled. I don't know if this is an intentional reference to something, but it says Pasidion's favorite child, Ash, Noala Hall, Christina Dodge, and Buford's #1 fan. And shout out to our newest demigod tier patrons, Toby Rama, Crystal El Khoury, Louis Laguerre, Rachel Bloom, Thomas Peelin, Bookmark Please, Marcia Lane McGee, Charlotte Ventura, Isabella Demoya, Amy, Tim Drake is best boy, Bananas are yellow, smiley face, Sloan Kenziora, Nia or Nea, Nea, Mark Julie, Soderberger, Rachel Johnson, Abhishek, Zoe Redstone Rothstein, and Daniel Steffen. And a name correction for Jasmine Thomasy. Thank you all so much for your support. May Poseidon bless you that if you are ever trying to avoid a forecast of rain by taking particular modes of transportation that will minimize your time spent walking in the rain, you nail it and you don't accidentally pick the worst possible time that gets you the most wet from a sudden rainstorm in, I don't know, New York City perhaps. Did this happen to me? Who's to say? Now, if you're all caught up on the News Olympian and you're looking for some new content to consume, you are in luck because I make a whole bunch of podcasts. I think you'd enjoy those podcasts. One of the ones I think you would really enjoy is a podcast called Horse that I co-host with my buddy who's a professional stand-up comedian, Adam Amawala. And it's a basketball podcast, but it's presented in a way where anyone, no matter what your level of fandom or knowledge of basketball is, you will enjoy the show. We talk about the NBA, we talk about the WNBA, but we talk about the stuff that happens off the court. So if you've been hearing rumblings about this Kawhi Leonard, Los Angeles Clippers scandal going around the cap with Aspiration, this company that went bankrupt and is getting sued and is under federal investigation, and how that relates to an NBA player getting a secret deal that violates the rules of the NBA. If this crime story appeals to you, we did almost an entire episode about it. So check that out. You can listen to Horse wherever you get your podcasts by searching for Horse or by going to our website, horsehoops.com. Now, unless you're listening on Patreon, where you get access to ad-free episodes, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors to make it feasible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of those ads will be read by me, and others of them won't be. The ones that aren't read by me are inserted locally. So if you live in Guinea-Bissau, don't be surprised if you hear an ad in Portuguese. But once those ads are complete, we'll get back into this episode of The Newest Olympian. And we're back, and we're here to discuss chapter 20, which is also called Annabeth, but we will retitle it. This chapter opens with, quote, "The new civil war had begun again. Oh no!" I like how Percy's chapter opening lines are always these quirky little jokes, and then Annabeth's are always like,
I mean, this one could be a chapter title.
What, just calling it the new Civil War
Civil War had
yeah,
begun.
for sure. Leo is somehow unscathed and is shooting fire at the approaching eagles. The Roman demigods are chasing after him. They're tripping over cannonballs and tourists who are being told by the tour guides it's just a reenactment, which I think is fantastic. There's a full-sized elephant in the courtyard wreaking havoc on the Romans. Annabeth guesses that it's Frank. Could it be anything else? What set of circumstances would it have to be for this not to be Frank unless the Romans brought Hannibal? Because he's still okay, right?
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Maybe they brought Hannibal over with an eagle carrying each corner.
Oh, yeah. Kind of
Flew him in like they fly whales.
Okay, yeah. Like in old footage where you see big animals being transported with like 4 helicopters and a big hammock in between them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was just watching Citizen Kane recently on one of our flights, and the beginning talks about how he has this big fancy zoo. He's a super rich dude, and they showed this footage, which I don't think they shot this footage for the movie. I would imagine that they did something a little more civilized, like, I don't know, a cargo plane or they trucked in the elephant. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it sounds like a super duper rich guy.
Hey!
There was that article when we were in Switzerland about how there was a landslide in a very specific region, and they helicoptered out all of the cows.
Yeah. The news when we were in Switzerland was much more wholesome and
so
calm.
Refreshing.
Yeah,
so nice.
Right. They get cow saved by helicopter. We get Supreme Court says breathing is illegal. It's just not the same. Anyway, Percy Jackson. Jason is fighting a Roman with cherry red lips that almost look bloody. And narrator Annabeth says, quote, a wannabe vampire or maybe a Kool-Aid freak. She knows everything.
You can smell it in the wind.
I just, like, how does narrator Annabeth see this and go, I know that shade of red. That's red 40. Like, how does she know this stuff? She's predicting everything. She's superhuman as the narrator. Jason apologizes to Dakota and then jumps over him and slams his hilt into the back of his head, knocking him out. Annabeth calls out to Jason and tells him to get the others on board the Argo 2 back in the habit. Jason agrees but asks what her plan is. She yells not to wait for her and runs off. Annabeth is annoyed that she must dip and dive through so many tourists. Gosh, she's just like me for real. But she appreciates them being there because they're keeping her alive by making the Romans' job tougher. Annabeth hides in a small room and thinks back to the Union soldiers who were attacked here in 1861. She knows some were children of Athena, and clearly they didn't want this map getting into the wrong hands, so she tries to identify where they would hide it. Narrator Annabeth says, quote, suddenly the walls glistened. The air became warm. Annabeth wondered if she was hallucinating. She was about to run for the exit when the door slammed shut. The mortar between the stones blistered, the bubbles popped, and thousands of tiny black spiders swelled forth. Oh, and that's when I realized, oh right, greatest fear was mentioned. But I thought Aphrodite was referring to the statue and the mark, not in this particular instance, but an Athena kid being afraid of spiders makes sense. But I still think my theory of Arachne showing up is still in play, because what is only a bigger fear than spiders? Giant spider. And I'm assuming Arachne's a giant spider. I guess we've never had confirmation if she's giant, but I've always assumed she's giant. I don't think she got turned in mythology into a regular size spider. Maybe she did, but I always assumed she was like big spider. Maybe
I
I'm
always
wrong.
assumed that too.
Yeah, but I've never really been confirmed it. So I don't know. We'll have to see. So Annabeth is frozen in fear. She's trying to convince herself that this isn't real. She's reminded of a time in her home in Virginia when spiders crawled out of her closet in droves and waited in the shadows. She called out for her dad, but he was out of town for work, so her stepmom came instead. And she insisted that it was just her imagination. She explained that she was scaring her baby brothers. And when Annabeth insisted that they weren't her brothers, her stepmom told her to go to sleep at once and to stop screaming. The spiders returned once her stepmom left the room. Annabeth hid under the covers and fell asleep out of exhaustion. She woke in the morning with bites and cobwebs all over her, though this all disappeared just before she spoke with her stepmom later that day. Terrifying. I don't like this at all.
I mean, I think there's something very normal parenting about telling your kid it's your imagination, you don't need to be afraid. Not so normal leaving them alone to cry and scream for a whole night.
It's cruel. Very cruel. And then that happened again the next night. And then on the third night, Annabeth ran away from home. As narrator Annabeth, she says, quote, later at Camp Half-Blood, she learned that all children of Athena feared spiders. Long ago, Athena had taught the mortal weaver Arachne a hard lesson, cursing her for her pride by turning her into the first spider. Ever since, spiders had hated the children of Athena. And that is a very, very shorthand description of what happened.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you knew that myth.
Yeah, I do know about it mainly because it was talked on a little bit in the main 5 Percy Jackson books. I'm intrigued to see how it fully comes up in this book because it really seems like it's about to happen. Narrator Annabeth reveals that one time she almost killed Connor Stoll for putting a tarantula in her bunk. And that's awful, even if you're not afraid of spiders. Like, obviously, it's next level awful to do that to someone with arachnophobia, but I don't think anyone is going to want a tarantula crawling on their face. Like, I'm not arachnophobic, but I would hate that.
Yeah, I don't think there are very many people who aren't afraid of spiders.
I don't know who's going to be in that situation, get a tarantula on their face and go, oh, look, a new friend.
I suppose there definitely are those people. But they're not me.
They must be people that work at the zoo. Maybe they work at Zootah, which is the zoo that we went to in Utah. It's called Zootah. And I got myself a mug and I got Johnny a hat because I knew he was going to love that pun. And it was a great surprise gift. And he enjoyed it. Gosh, Zootah. I was so glad that it was actually called Zootah. But anyway, Percy Jackson. Annabeth reminds us of the water park spiders in case you skipped the lightning thief. And apparently, Annabeth had been dreaming of spiders every night. Back in the present, Annabeth hears Gia's voice go, soon, my dear, you will meet the weaver soon. And as I've said, I'm trying to turn her into Yzma or Madame Zeroni. And we're getting the confirmation that Arachne is going to come up. And this moment is in my notes. I just wrote in all caps, Arachne! And I continued in my notes. Okay, that's the biggest fear then. Got to face off against giant spider before the statue.
I got really distracted when you were talking about Yzma because I love your Kronk voice. And I was trying to think which Percy Jackson character would have your Kronk voice.
I don't know. I don't know if there's any himbo Percy Jackson characters, but at the very least, I will do a second of my because I always like with impressions. I don't know if it's called like a waking phrase, but like you do a phrase that just like gets you in the thing. So anytime I'm trying to do the Kronk thing, I always just start with Cusco's poison, the poison for Cusco. Annabeth asks Gia who the weaver is. It's Arachne. The spiders get excited when she asks this. Then Gia goes, I hope you survive, child. I would prefer you as my sacrifice, but we must let the weaver take her revenge. I really got to work on my Yzma. It's like going in and out. I really got to perfect this. It's hard to like do it right off the bat because it's just better if I say the exact phrases of like, a llama.
Yeah.
Or, for always and eternity. Like I got to get more of general. I got to just start practicing talking as Yzma. Maybe I'll decide one of the characters in the books I read to our baby before bedtime. I'll just be like, this one, like one of the crayons in The Day the Crayons Quit, is just going to be Yzma now.
For the purple one.
Yeah, purple crayon, you're Yzma now. After her voice fades out, because she wears purple. After her voice fades out, a red owl symbol, the same as the one on the mark, appears on the wall. It then burns across the walls and torches all the spiders. A new voice says, go, avenge me, follow the mark. And that's got to be Athena. The garrison door bursts open. Annabeth is unsure if that was all real or just a vision. An explosion rumbles the building, and Annabeth is reminded that her friends are still in danger and she's been here long enough. She's still shaken, but she goes outside. She looks across the courtyard and sees a large mortar pointed out to sea that she thinks is glowing red, whether it's her imagination or it's real. Annabeth rushes towards it either way, dodging a swooping eagle. She then sees the Romans approaching the Argo II golden receiver, but they have a mini thunderstorm above their heads. Annabeth doesn't stop to think about it. Instead, she just approaches the mortar. I was thinking that the storm is coming from Jason, but Annabeth just can't focus on this right now. The mark of Athena, which is now used to mean the symbol and not the coin, so just when we see this owl, that's the mark of Athena, it glows on the mortar. Quote, in the mortar, of course, thinks Annabeth. And my thought is that really of course? Like, is that really such an obvious thing of like, oh yeah, the map is definitely in this giant cannonball shooter?
Well, for me, I was rather confused because the architect in me thought mortar as in like...
brick and mortar?
As in like the gravelly glue bit between bricks and blocks and things like that. And so this part made like no sense to me.
You're such an architect.
Yeah.
Annabeth tries pulling out the plug. It is of no... Sorry.
Again, I was like, what is there a plug doing in the mortar? I was so confused. I just was like, let's just move on.
Annabeth tries pulling out the plug to no avail, but when she touches it with her dagger, the plug shrinks and loosens. She feels around for it and finds a bronze disc the size of a saucer. She puts it into her bag and says, I'll get this later. Maybe next time I'm the narrator. She turns to leave, but then hears Raina go rushing off. And my thought is, aren't you on our side, Raina? What's going on? She's in full gear with her 2 dogs by her side. The 2 of them are isolated from the rest of the skirmish. Annabeth starts to explain what happened was Gia's fault using using eidolons. And as I mentioned earlier in this episode, I love that everyone's instinct, everyone of the seven, just immediately, the second the Romans show up, they want to go, oh, look, I'm so sorry. Let me explain what happened. I promise. And then the Romans are like, no! But the seven are always trying at their very first instinct to be, wait, we can explain, I promise. And I love that because I feel like that's a frustrating thing that comes up in other books, and they always are trying their hardest to explain the situation. So it's not because of a lack of desire for communication, and it makes me really happy. But Raina says, save your explanations. You'll need them for the trial. Raina, come on. You're supposed to be good. Annabeth doesn't like her chances against Raina, even without the dogs. But with the dogs, absolutely no shot. Annabeth tells her that if she lets Gia divide the camps, the giants have already won. And Raina responds, don't you think I know that? She explains that she has no choice, as Octavian is out for blood, and he has stirred everyone into a frenzy. She asks Annabeth to surrender to her so she can bring her back to New Rome for a trial. Quote, it won't be fair. You'll be painfully executed, but it may be enough to stop further violence. Octavian won't be satisfied, of course, but I think I can convince the others to stand down. And yeah, that's going to be a no from me, dog. Annabeth says it wasn't her. Raina says it doesn't matter. Someone must pay, and she should take the fall, as it's, quote, the better option. Annabeth asks, better than what? Raina tells her to use that big old brain of hers. If they escape, they won't follow. If Octavian cannot have revenge against the ship, he'll have revenge against Camp Half-Blood. And then this is where I thought of the prophecy that said something about the daughter of Athena walks alone. So is Annabeth going to have to separate from the group? Very interesting to me.
This is where I wish that this was one of the Choose Your Own Adventure novels. Did you ever read those?
Yeah.
I would like to see, go to this page to see Annabeth go back to New Rome, and then go to this page to see her do XYZ.
If she went back to New Rome, I feel like she would have been painfully executed.
Probably. But then what? Like Percy comes and rains down violence to avenge her? Like what happens after that?
That is intriguing. That is intriguing. Annabeth hears her mother's voice go, kill the Romans. They can never be our allies. And Annabeth is truly torn. Camp Half-Blood is her home, and she told Raina exactly where it was while trying to befriend her. I had forgotten about that. But then on the other hand, all of her efforts to get Percy back would be in vain if they don't complete their quest, and she wants to complete the Mark of Athena quest and use the reward for something other than revenge. She knows the Mark can lead her there. It's just a matter of will she survive or not. So she tells Raina that she's going to follow the Mark of Athena to Rome. Raina says she has no clue what's in store. Annabeth says that she does and wants to heal the grudge. Raina asks how one person will fix a 1,000-year-old grudge. Annabeth wants to give a perfect answer with an accompanying model, but she cannot. And did you like what happened with the whole Annabeth and Frank thing where Annabeth brought up like a 3D model to try to explain the finger trap? Is that how you would have approached the situation?
Yeah, totally.
Which program would you have used?
You know, you asked me this at the live show and I was taken a little off guard. So I've been giving it some thought over the last month.
Just racking your brain.
Right here is the 3D. I would probably use adaptive components in Revit, but I would write a Dynamo script to do that.
15 architects listening to the podcast they just went like, yeah, as they take out the trash and listen to this podcast. Anyway, Percy Jackson, Annabeth tells Raina that the quest must succeed, so Raina can try and stop her, which means they'll just have to fight to the death. The other option is to let Annabeth go so that she can save both camps. If attacking Camp Half-Blood is unavoidable, maybe Raina could at least try and slow Octavian down. Raina says, quote, one daughter of a war goddess to another, I respect your boldness, but if you leave now, you doom your camp to destruction. Annabeth tells Raina not to underestimate Camp Half-Blood. Raina claps back by saying she's never seen Camp Jupiter's legion at war. Annabeth can hear Octavian going, kill them all, in the distance. He's crowded behind the other demigods who are trying to fend off the overhead storm with shields. She sees Percy and Jason on the deck together with their swords crossed. They are working together to channel the sky and the sea to obey them. And I think that it's really cool because they had this whole like little rivalry thing going on, like who's the leader? And I'm screaming at the book, Annabeth's the leader. Why are you fighting? I felt like it was all unnecessary. And honestly, I feel like it was out of character for both of them, especially Jason. I felt like Percy wasn't super into the rivalry, but Jason just didn't seem like the Jason that I knew from The Lost Hero. And he was even upset a couple of chapters ago when they went to Atlanta and he was like, oh, what about you, ocean boy, Captain Saltwater? Where should we go? And I don't know. It didn't feel like the Jason that I know and love. So I didn't appreciate them having this completely unnecessary rivalry. I'm glad that this now feels like they're putting it to the side because I don't think they need to butt heads at all.
I mean, Gay has been whispering into their ear
Oh,
So there might be some of that
okay.
mixing in with their own thoughts. And also, they've never been put into a situation for either of them where they're not top dog.
Yeah, but Percy, I guess, spent so much time like not caring and not wanting to be top dog that it doesn't seem like something that would be important to him.
But now
Jason,
he must protect Annabeth.
That is different. Yeah, Jason also didn't want to be like, they were both similar in that they were like forced to be the leader and they didn't really want to. So
but
it just
now they
felt.
are. I think it more has to do with Gale whispering in their ear.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. But I am just glad that this feels like the beginning of a new era for them, because I would want them to be bros fully teamed up before they go to Europe, because them working together would be so fun and very, very exciting. So narrator Annabeth says, quote, water and wind churned together. Waves heaved against the ramparts. Are they crenellated? I gotta know. And lightning flashed. Giant eagles were knocked out of the sky. Wreckage of the flying chariot burned in the water, and Coach Hedge swung a mounted crossbow, taking potshots at the Roman birds as they flew overhead. Reyna tells Annabeth that the spear is thrown, the two sides are at war, and this was a golden opportunity to say the die is cast. Alia acta est. Are you Roman or are you not, Reyna? In case people didn't know, I took Latin in high school, and I was also, I don't think I've ever said this, maybe, I don't know. I was also the Latin club president my senior year, and I won by unanimous vote.
By the one person, you, in the club?
By the 12 people in the club. So maybe it was an 11-0 vote. I'm not sure, but I might have been the 12th person. But yeah, Latin club president was not necessarily a big responsibility. You mainly just had to go to some mandatory meetings, and then you got to make the Latin club t-shirt, which I did design. I designed it to wear our school mascot, which was kind of like an anthropomorphized eagle, like a big buff eagle dude. It was him in Roman gear, and then his shield had the face of our freshman year Latin teacher, Father Bellish, who was the coolest and the best teacher, just the sweetest old man. And it was his face on the shield. I do have that shirt in one of my dressers in Barb and Joel's place, so I'll have to unearth it. Yeah, I can't believe I haven't been wearing it, but I do have it. This is also the point where in the live show, I talked about the whole Curtamen Latin convention, Latin Jeopardy thing. And I had felt like I had talked about it. And then someone told me after the show that I did a bonus episode about it. So if you want to hear me talk about how, as a member of the Latin Club, I went to regional and I think statewide competitions for Latin and competed in Latin Jeopardy and all these other like Latin academic tests as well. I made a whole bonus episode about that. It's also going to be in the live show thing that we'll put online. So there's multiple ways you can go on Patreon and hear me talk about my super duper nerdy Latinist. If you've ever listened to one of my shows and gone, man, I want to hear more about this Latin stuff. I've got the content for you. But anyway, Percy Jackson, Annabeth replies, not if I succeed. Reyna has the same look she had when she learned about Piper, a lot of loneliness and bitterness about how nothing goes right for her and nothing will. She calls for her dogs to stand down and tells Annabeth when they meet again, they will be enemies on the battlefield. Annabeth runs for the ship, not worrying about if this is a trick or not. The mini-storm does not affect her. She runs through the enemy lines. Octavian screams, stop her! The ship is already leaving. Piper holds out her hand like she's Letty Ortiz in a Fast and Furious movie for Annabeth to jump and grab. It works. They land on the deck, and then Annabeth goes, go, go, go. And then the book ends with this quote. The engines rumbled beneath her. The oars churned. Jason changed the course of the wind, and Percy called up a massive wave, which lifted the ship higher than the fort's walls and pushed it out to sea. By the time the Argo II reached top speed, Fort Sumter was only a blot in the distance, and they were racing across the waves toward the ancient lands. That is the end of the chapter, which I've retitled Frenemies. What have you retitled it?
I have retitled it The Celestial Bronze Die is Cast.
Ooh, that's very good. That's very good. And that is the end of this episode. Kelly, thank you so much for joining again to break down these chapters with me.
When you asked me to do the same chapters again next month, this will just be a monthly thing. We always talk about chapter 18 to 20 of the Mark of Athena.
And the jokes just get tighter and tighter and tighter. I guess this is a good time to do a little peek behind in that the only other time we did this was because of scheduling when we were on tour in Europe at the Berlin show. By nature of the show selling out, but me not thinking it was going to, we booked another show, but we just had to do the same chapters again because I wasn't going to be able to read chapters in between the two shows because we did an early show and a late show. So we did the early show and then we did the late show. We did the same chapters and we were just firing on all cylinders. Oh, that's the recording that got used in the actual episode. Maybe I'll do a bonus thing where I'll put like the early show and people can be like, wow, it wasn't as good. Not to say that it wasn't good for the folks who were at the early show, but just like when you've already made the jokes and like gone through the notes and stuff.
Yeah, we cut the unnecessary. We got right down to business. We made good jokes. We made new jokes.
I stumbled less in my notes because I had read them on stage once before, so it was super fresh in my mind.
I stumbled less with, I always stumble with this, with knowing, because I read the book so long ago, with knowing what you know versus what you don't know. And so I always ask that question before I like dive in. So that was gone for me as well. Yeah.
What we're saying is in the future, we should just always book 2 shows, but then everyone will just buy tickets to the late show. We should perform it for no one, like a dress rehearsal.
Oh my gosh.
We'll get to the stage 6 hours early. Anyway, Kelly, thank you.
Sound check is actually
it's just the show. Oh, okay. This is normally where people promote stuff. Do you want to promote anything?
Yeah. So there's this really great.
You don't have to do this.
This really great podcast that I've been listening to. Amateur listeners. And it's a companion podcast to this other great podcast called Professional Talkers.
Are you going to make a rival podcast of Professional Talkers called Amateur Listeners, where you just critique the conversational advice we give?
It's not a rival podcast. It's like a companion podcast where I just talk about you talking.
It's like if someone made the newest Olympian, where it's a podcast about someone listening to the newest Olympian for the first time, and they review all the episodes.
But it'll be really bad because I'm an amateur listener. I don't do it professionally.
Gosh, wouldn't that be a great job if you just listen to podcasts full time? My goodness. Wow, that'd be great. Kelly, thank you so much for listening. Listeners, thank you.
Kelly, thank you so much for listening. It's my job.
Kelly, thank you so much for joining. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. And until next time, when we see where the ship is headed and what happens next, until then, I'll pursue you later.
Pursue you.
Hello. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the social media and the website. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you really enjoy the show and you just can't get enough, there's a couple of different things that you can do. First, you can go to patreon.com/The Newest Olympian, and you can get access to all sorts of bonus content that I post on a very regular basis. You also can find us and get involved in the community on social media. We've got an Instagram, we've got a Blue Sky, we've got a Twitter, we've got a Facebook, we've got a subreddit, we've got a Discord that's available to all patrons. If you want to support the show, you can get merch at thenewesolympian.com/merch. You can see live shows at thenewesolympian.com/live, and you can check out the aforementioned Patreon. And speaking of, I want to give a shout out to our highest tier, the Ultra God tier patrons who are helping to produce this show with their financial support. So shout out to Kelsey Gillespie, Vicky Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Polly Burge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Josh Sayer, Abby Ryan, Marco Redhouse, Sam Reeby, Mrs. O'Leary, Milo Kim, Sandkopf, Rayla Matthews, Sky Mallory, Persasabeth, Aiden Parziani, Grace, Ginger Spurs Boy, A Cup of Solace, Bradamus Prime, Skylar Sisters, Scott Sheldon, Natanya Page, Ann M. Thayer Cohen, Bella, Percy Jacked Son, Han Haley Hingelheimer Schmidt, Catherine Sloan, Haley Mary, Jim Jam Koopy, Kit Kat Crumbs, Andrea, not Andrea, Jordan Ray, Nico's Black Vespa, and Zayden Wintergate. If you want to support the show in a non-monetary way, just spreading the show via word of mouth is huge. You can tell someone directly who you think would like the show. You could post about it on social media. You could leave a rating and review on whatever podcasting app you're using. All of these things really do help, and I really appreciate anyone who has done it in the past or will do so in the future. But I'm just so thankful that you tuned into this episode, and I hope you tune into our next episode where we'll be joined by a new guest, Paul from the That Aged Well podcast, to break down chapters 21 and 22 of the Mark of Athena. But until then, I'll pursue you later. Hey everyone, how's it going? It's me, ASMR Mike. So here in the Auxiliary Schubio, I have a travel toiletry bag that I used the last time I went on a trip out of town. I need to put it away, but before I do, let's just like kind of rustle through it a bit. This is the sound of me taking out my travel toothbrush. It's my old mechanical toothbrush, so there it is. It's been tried and true. I've had it for like 10 years. I've upgraded recently, but it's a good one. I've got, let's see, deodorants in here. Here's a bottle of hydrogen peroxide that I always keep in case my ears get clogged too much because it breaks down earwax. I'll undo the cap and close back up. Lots of good stuff here in this little travel bag. Let me zip it up and that'll be that. Thank you so much for listening.